recent home Bible study I was attending, we were discussing the parable of the prodigal son. One of the folks participating observed, when the prodigal son returns, the father never compares him to his older brother, and doesn't compare the older brother to the prodigal son, not while he's embracing and receiving the prodigal son home, nor when he's inviting the older son into the feast. Another member of our group added, "Good point, and I don't think God ever compares us to one another either. In fact, doesn't Jesus display sadness at the Pharisee praying in the temple who compares himself to the publican? But the publican just prays and asks God to have mercy on him." Most of the group members are folks I know through classical conversations, but all of us are parents who love our children. So I asked, what do you think this means about how we grade our kids? I mean, when we give them assessments and tell them they scored a 94% or earned an A, are we accidentally creating an environment in their challenge class that encourages them to compare their scores and therefore themselves? Are we encouraging them to think they are better than their neighbor because of some number or letter grade they received? Maybe, one lady replied, but how else do you score them on something like a math quiz? Either they got it right or not, and the rights and the wrongs easily turn into a percentage grade. True, and I know that there are some things that we do need to assess quantitatively, such as grammar facts. They either get them right or they get them wrong. But there are other things that should probably be assessed qualitatively. Does it make sense to assess a student with a 92 or with an A on his ability to lead a seminar or to write a persuasive essay? Wouldn't it make more sense for that type of assessment to be qualitative? Wouldn't it make more sense to give them clear, specific, straightforward feedback that tells them what they can do to improve and tells them what they did well and need to continue doing? That type of assessment makes it much more difficult for them to compare themselves to one another. Then another guy cut in. Right, it would make sense if God was giving you a test on the 10 Commandments to say that you got a 90%. But if he was judging your Christian life, your Christian walk, does it make sense for him to say, "Good job, you got an A," or "Well done, thou good and faithful servant"? Right, I said. And the more I think about it, the more I think it is important to know what we are praising our child for as well. Sometimes I tell my child that he's done a good job for being smart, when I really mean that he's worked hard at something. "What do you mean?" he said. Well, to praise our child for being smart or for having eyesight or something like that seems kind of silly. Those are gifts from God, and it is God that should be praised for those things. But to praise our child for having done the work to memorize his memory master work and foundations, or to memorize his lines from Shakespeare in Challenge 3, those are things that the child does that are worthy of praise. "Oh, right, I see that," he said. Yeah, the story of the prodigal son begs me to ask questions about the unexamined assumptions of modern education. I want to know when it is right to assess my child quantitatively and when it is right to assess him qualitatively and say, "Well done, thou good and faithful student. Well done."